Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
The Great Resignation, also known as the Big Quit, and also known as the Great Opt-out. It all began in early 2021. A lot about it has been already said. Much has been already written. Some are telling that the only opportunity to grow is by leaving, while others believe that the massive quit is destructive and is possibly an irreversible trend. So what's up with the workplaces now? Is the Great Resignation calling for some re-engagement? How is it changing the entire workplace? There is so much to dig in. Let's begin. Hi everyone, I'm Shushmita, and for today's episode, I'm so glad to welcome Natasha Bowman, the founder and president at Performance Renew, to discuss more about the Great Resignation. Welcome to the show, Natasha.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me, Natasha. So before we start with the topic today, it would be great if you can tell us a bit about your journey in the corporate world.
So I started off my career as a labor and employment law attorney. But didn't do that for very long. I got tired of being on the dark side of misconduct. So I decided to transition to the HR side to be more proactive proactive and positive and creating engaging workplaces. So I worked in corporate world. I worked for Walmart Stores Incorporated. I transitioned to the head of HR for several healthcare organizations. Before founding my firm, Performance Renew. And at Performance Renew, we work on cultural transformation.
You are often referred to as the workplace doctor, Natasha.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Great Resignation is an illness?
Oh, man, as the workplace doctor, I have to tell you, there definitely is an illness that needs to be remedied really, really soon.
So how do you like to, start to describe the Great Resignation to our audience today?
Yeah. So essentially what happened when the COVID pandemic happened and employees shifted from being on site to a remote environment, they essentially were removed from toxic workplaces. And a lot of them didn't realize how toxic their workplaces were until they left them. And they had the opportunity to spend more time with their family, their friends, and to do things that they really were passionate about and also be productive. They got to really realize what work-life balance is. Right. So therefore, they decided after having that year or two of relief of, not having the stresses of getting up, getting to work in the morning, commuting to work and, being in this toxic work environment that, hey, once their employer said, hey, it's time to come back to work, they just weren't willing to do that. They decided to put their mental health, the things that they're, passionate about, before these organizations that have not put those things at the forefront, previously.
So that is why I think a lot of people also want to call the term Great Resignation as a great opt-out, isn't it?
Yes. That's really what it is. I'm opting out of a bad work environment.
Definitely, yeah. So how do you see, the employee and the employer psychology, changing with the pandemic?
Yeah, I think what's going to happen, is that employers have to understand that their culture can't be the same way it was, post-pandemic than it was pre-pandemic. And they're going to have to create these cultures of wellness, mental wellness, cultures of civility, cultures of respect. Because what we've understood is that, people didn't leave because of money or anything like that. They really just left because they wanted to feel human again. And, we were working people like robots, and they don't want to work like robots. They want to work like humans. So we have to bring humanity back to work. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that were learned through the pandemic is that you really got to connect with, again, what you truly cared about, the people you really truly cared about, and realize that for too long you were putting your work ahead of all of that. So employers have to figure out, what does work-life balance really mean? They thought they knew what it meant before, but they got to redefine that now.
Right. So do you think it's too late for employers to realize that, because the people who have left don't even care to come back to the same organization again?
Yeah, absolutely.
For most employers, I can see that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we got the job numbers in for November, and at least in the United States, it broke records, the number of people that left the workplace. So they're still leaving, at record numbers. And so therefore, it may be too late to bring those employees back to work. Mm-hmm. But, for those people that you're hiring to replace them, this gives you an opportunity to give them a different, more positive experience so that they will stay with you for a longer period of time. And they can still achieve what, we should have been achieving with our previous workforce that left.
Right. So apart from, mental well-being and physical well-being, with the Great Resignations, there comes a major lessons, So how can businesses or employers, they can engage their employees, apart from offering some free meals and a few days off, and probably a happy hour?
Right. That's what we thought engagement was. That's what we thought, wellness was, having steps challenges, weight loss contests, all that type of stuff. We know that has to be different now. And it really has to be a true focus on wellness, and really particularly mental wellness, because if you don't have mental wellness, then you can't have physical wellness. So, so with that being said, instead of offering those free meals and the days off and things like that, first of all, people want days off, but those days off have to be meaningful. That doesn't mean that I feel guilty because I'm going to come back to hundreds of emails, and it would have been better if I just come to work that day, right? That's the feeling that I was having, right? It's got to be about, like I said, creating cultures of respect and, civility, right? Where I'm walking into a positive work environment, getting rid of leaders who lead through, through fear, and toxicity.
Toxic leaders, right.
Yeah, toxic leaders, getting rid of those. They'll take a good boss over a free meal any day, so, creating those types of cultures and really just assessing your organization to understand what's disrupting your positive culture.
Right.
Or who is disrupting your positive culture, and removing those things. That's what engagement is. Once I walk in and I'm not, faced with what I like to call culture vultures, I'm not faced with those, then I'm able to perform. I'm able to be engaged. I'm going to go over and beyond what I typically do to see this organization successful.
Right. So employers should take care that if they're giving a few days off this week, they should make sure that when their employees come back, they shouldn't have that extra pressure of not coming earlier week, right?
Right. Exactly. No one should feel guilty for taking off, or you're sitting the whole time like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to come back, to so much work. And implement mental health days, in the organization. And, mental health days are different than your typical day off. Typically, if I want to take a vacation day or a holiday, I've got to pre-schedule that, right? Tell my boss, 2 weeks from now, I need time off for whatever. So typically if I just can't come to work today because I'm just not mentally capable of doing it, I may call in sick, but I'm not really sick. I don't really have a headache or a stomachache or anything. I just need time away.
So, just a me time day off, maybe.
Yeah. So instead of, I need to reserve those sick days for when I really am sick. And also employers expect if you're sick, you're either, in the bed, resting, or you're seeing a provider. These mental health days are for me to do whatever I need to do in order to rejuvenate, distress. That may mean going to the movies, going to a mall, going to the spa. I can't do that on a sick day, right? If I get called out, walking to the park and I'm supposed to be sick, I may get in trouble. So that's the distinction of those mental health days versus, sick days, holidays, and just 2 or 3 of those days a year offered to employees will make all the difference in the world for them. And everybody needs to walk away every now and then.
Yeah, and especially now it has become a very important thing, for some days off, or being just to be happy at home or anywhere, maybe. So people are also, before we used to have just work fatigue, and now the term has changed to, virtual fatigue and Zoom fatigue, and a lot of people are dealing with it currently. So what do you have to say about that? Would you like to add something more into it?
I think people, really just need the opportunity to do the things that make them, happy, and we need to ensure that they have that opportunity guilt-free.
So in Zoom fatigue, especially, there is always this, we also work from home. Several people are working from home. In Zoom fatigue, we see this continuous concern of, keeping our cameras on. So do you think that is a very important factor that is, making some noise?
Yeah, you know what? I think it should be optional. There are going to be some days where, I want to engage with people. I want to look people in their eyes and talk to them. But there may be some days where I just can't get up and get camera ready,
Exactly.
So I don't think it should be a requirement, at least not for every single meeting. There may be some times, let's say you're going through a training program. Some of my clients may require the Zoom to be on because they want to just make sure that they are engaged. They're understanding the topic. They're not distracted, Right. But if I'm having a conversation that, would have typically in the olden days been just a phone call, there's no need for me to have my camera on. There's no need for you to have to see me. Right. So I think we treat it just like we would when we're in the workplace. If you're in the workplace and you're at your desk, sometimes your boss or whoever, your colleagues may give you a call, right? They're not looking at you. You're talking on the phone. And then sometimes you're called you have, in-person meetings. And maybe those are the times that we require your camera to be on. But to ask someone every single meeting to have their camera on can be exhausting. And not just because people want to be, or, being distracted. You got to remember, you are in people's homes. So now I have this extra responsibility, making sure that my surroundings are clean, that, I don't have distractions. My kids are not, or my dog is not in the camera, or my cat, so that there really shouldn't be a need to have a camera on. And that can be exhausting. And that's kind of a downside of working remote, is having the constant eye-to-eye contact through Zoom,
Yeah. So there are a lot of things on the employers part to understand, I guess, even in the part of employees. But I think in this concern, employers have to be a bit, and more understanding, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
They have to be very understanding of the situation. And if someone says, hey, today's not a day I can keep my camera on, respect that, and that's not the worst thing in the world that can happen.
Respect is the word, actually. Yeah. So and then again, employers are talking about the great disconnect also in this concern, isn't it? So they are actually demanding, people to come back to the workplace. So how many? So you are working in this, field for so long now. So do you see the employers, forcing people to come back to the office?
Yeah, I was definitely seeing that towards the end of last year. But then we had a resurgence of COVID and they're kind of sending them back home. So now you've got, that's also playing on people's, psychological safety of, am I going back to work? Am I not going back to work? Or maybe I've been called back to work and I'm, so afraid because of this new COVID variant that's going on. I have seen from my clients, people just quitting on the spot saying, look, I don't want to get on the subway. I don't want to get, I'm scared to be out there. So I think that, going back to the Great, Resignation, it's, if you want to stop that from happening, then again, you need to allow that flexibility. If people have been successful at working remotely for the past 2 years, why are you bringing them back to work? Right? Because a lot of times it's because leaders just don't trust their employees and they don't trust them for no reason at all. So if they don't trust their employees are not going to trust them. And that just doesn't make for a great connection. And people are going to leave. That relationship is going to be severed. So I don't see a need, unless you're in, healthcare somewhere where you've got to be, feet to the ground at work, for people to be calling people back just yet. It's still a danger out there. People are still very, very scared. And as I've said before, people have just, been more happy being at home, than in the office.
So I think a small percentage of employees are there who can't wait to come back, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm an in-person person. I like seeing people. I've been doing my trainings over Zoom for the past 2 years, sitting in one place looking in this camera, all day. I'm ready to get back into workplaces. I'm ready to see people. I'm ready to talk to people and, have them doing activities. But that's just me, that's just my preference. And maybe, when we talk about the return to work, just give people options. If your office is still available, you're welcome to come in. And it may be where some people may choose a hybrid model. You know what? I'll come in a couple days.
Hybrid is something that is coming
Yeah. And I think that's the best, if you ask me. And to balance this, that's the best solution, is to give people the option of, coming in a couple days a week or not. Some people, some days you may feel like getting up, getting dressed, getting out of your house, because also sitting in your house day after day isn't healthy either. Right. So, you may feel like getting up, getting dressed, going to work, being with your colleagues, and some days you don't, so working that hybrid model, I think, is the best option.
So, Natasha, we have talked about how we can, re-engage our current employees, but is there a way that we can bring back the workers who have left us?
I don't know. I really, have been thinking about this question, for some time now, of how do we bring employees back? And I think that, workplaces have to just kind of prove themselves again. They've got to rebrand themselves. They've got to rebuild their reputations to these cultures of civility, cultures of respect, and then I think employees will then consider returning back. Many have pursued entrepreneurship journeys, things that they're very passionate about, and they're enjoying that journey. Some, the biggest demographic that was impacted by the Great Resignation were working mothers. And they have decided to, I'm going to be a full-time caregiver. I don't know if that's going to change. And then you have kind of the people in between where we don't know exactly what they're doing, So maybe that's the group that you can, that employers can potentially tap to come back. But I think before that happens, they've got a lot of work to do to show, once again, as I said earlier, that their culture post-pandemic is going to be significantly different than their pre-pandemic culture.
That is gaining back the trust that was not there during the, COVID. And even now, actually, I think COVID is not leaving us. So I think the Great Resignation is going to follow us for a long time, right?
Absolutely. It's going to go, even if COVID does, go away, we don't see another variant. People are going to be scared for a while to trust, okay, it's really gone, right? Because we thought we were in this clear end of last year. We thought things were looking significantly better, and then, we see this research. So it's going to take a while for people to really trust that when it's gone, it's gone, so, and then we don't know when that's going to happen. We've seen so many variants. We just don't know. So I think the best thing to do is plan for COVID in a COVID mindset, at least, for the very, very significant future.
Brilliant. So Natasha, would like to know about your forthcoming book, The Power of One, Leading with Civility, Candor, and Courage.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you. I'm so excited about this book.
So it is coming by March, right? By
March, it should be.
Yes.
Here. So it's based on my TED Talk that I did in 2018. And I worked on it actually right after that TED Talk throughout 2019. I finished it, and for some reason I did nothing with it. I don't know why. And now I know why. I guess I had an intuition that something big was going to happen, and something big happened. COVID happened. And that gave me the opportunity to really, I pretty much rewrote the whole book to address COVID and, everything we talked about today, how, as we are thinking about shifting our workplaces and the culture in the workplace, how leaders should be leading with civility, candor, and courage. Also, if I think about the individual, maybe you don't have a leader title, but you still have a power of one. And we saw that, especially in America during the racial reckoning after the murder of George Floyd. And people realized that race and racism, were having such an impact on the way that we work, the way that we lived. And many people, didn't realize that experience of Black people in the U.S. So what we saw was people being courageous, people being allies, so we saw, this, racial reckoning. So I talk about that as well. But really, it's about using your individual power, your power of one, to make a change, right? Because essentially, it's those ordinary actions that can make extraordinary change in our workplace, in our communities. And those ordinary actions are built around in the book, these three C's, of virtue, which is civility, candor, and courage. And if we all embrace those 3 C's of virtue, then, it makes our workplaces just better.
Brilliant, Natasha. We wish you all the best for your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Natasha, we have reached the end of this show. What would be your suggestions to our HR listeners?
Yeah, I know your, audience is primarily, HR, and I hear you. I work with you every day. I know that you are burned out and you are feeling exhausted, ignored, unappreciated. If you are a recruiter right now, oh my goodness, you're really burned out, trying to figure out what the next steps are. So my suggestion is, to make sure as you are supporting your workplaces, your leaders, your client groups within your organizations, that you're also taking care of you. You are an employee and you deserve to be treated respectfully. You deserve to be treated with civility as well. And I think sometimes as HR people, we, forget about that. So that's what I want to just encourage everyone, is to make sure that you're taking care of you.
Great. So finally, how can our listeners reach out to you, Natasha?
Yeah, so there are several methods. My website is performance-renew.com. You can just fill out a contact form, reach out to me. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So just look up Natasha Bowman, JD, and connect with me there. I have a newsletter on there called Let's Talk About Work, where I share more insights very similar to, what we just discussed here. And I would love to connect with you on there and continue these types of conversations on a daily basis.
Right. So I'll be linking your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, Natasha. So this has been an ultimate pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show to talk about the Great Resignation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.